we get onto Skype in a conference room. We've done some really cool things with the conference room, in their Skype endpoint, Skype for Business.
Yes.
So it's like, one touch now, because you invite the room to the meeting and all that, really works great. But there's always some doofus with their laptop and sharing or something, and joins the audio.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about this again is that you're not, as the town, doesn't require you to make some investment in a particular, back-end infrastructure or cloud service to, facilitate the videos. We can use whatever we want. We can use Google Hangouts, we can use Skype for Business, we can use Zoom for meeting. Well, there are Fortune 50 if you want.
Oh, thank you. How do we get a media? That's pretty nice.
Belmont Media Center. Okay.
And it looks the part.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. Do you have these at IBM?
I want to get one.
It's in the one I sent out.
Right, okay.
So this printout is out of date.
Got it.
So, Charlie, if you look on, let me turn your laptop, Charlie. If you look, you can see the participants. Yeah, you can see them up here. And it's up to them whether they have video and audio enabled. It's actually up to you as the meeting organizer whether you want to let them have video and audio enabled. So you have very kind of granular control on Zoom, which is the platform I use, as to the circumstances under which outsiders can participate in your meeting. That's one of the concerns, I think, on the town side is we don't want trolls, we don't want people mooning us, we don't want, people who are disruptive, but almost all of these platforms give you, enough of that. Let's keep going. Call in our January meeting of the IT Advisory Committee to order, and thanks everybody for coming. I think the first order of business here is we have 2 sets of minutes to approve, October and November. And very esteemed secretary has sent those out for review. And I know some of you had online comments that have been added, but if there are others, now is the time. Let's start with October, I guess.
Another copy somewhere? Show up.
So in the October minutes, I believe that the printed copy is
It's out of date.
it's out of date. There's been a slight typo correction.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that happened at what, like 3:30 or something?
But so the reference to lynda.com, the spelling of Linda is Lynda.
Right.
So Dave said he had made that correction on the minutes.
Any others on the October meeting?
Are we free to ask a question about, I think the minutes were fine, but there was a question that came up when we started talking about the Genius Bar concept
Yes.
and a potential liability concern because the kids could be considered giving out professional advice.
My suggestion is that we put that discussion off for later in the conversation because we have some,
That's fine.
that's an agenda item.
That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
I'll second that. This is later in the meeting. We already talked about that. Okay. If there are no other, besides the lynda.com correction, if there are no other changes or corrections on the October minutes, we want to move to adopt these. So moved.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not opposed. So they're adopted. And now the November minutes. Anybody need a hard copy print of the November minutes? I've got one.
Did you fix the spelling of Jonathan's last
Yes.
name in this one?
Yes, it is. If it's not in the print out, then that's also
Sorry,
out of
I
date.
printed this out earlier, so yeah, I think. I read them and they look looked good to me. I don't know if anybody else has any changes or suggestions or corrections. Nope. If there aren't, all in favor, do we have somebody move to adopt the minutes from the November 18th IT Advisory Committee meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Adopted. Let me just see, next would be public comments, and I'm just looking online to see if we have any virtual attendees. We do not. And it doesn't seem that we have any members of the public here in the room, so I think we can move past that agenda item. And to
Move to go to
the moving into executive session part to talk about that report. Okay, so let's.
You need a motion, right?
Huh?
You need a motion?
Yeah. Somebody want to move into executive session to discuss it? Do you want to read the whole?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll move to go to executive session. To
Discuss the deployment of security personnel or devices or strategies with respect thereto. Somebody want to second that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, so we're going to enter executive session. You can close the door. I'm going to mute the audio and video here.
again?
I think we're good.
Oh, you want it like that? Okay.
The eyes are on.
And then the video is still off.
So it's
Is
like an omnidirectional.
Saying executive
Yeah,
session.
at the very top.
Oh, that's probably just sharing.
Your type on
That's the only way we can hide. It's the only way we can hide.
Okay.
It starts flapping around the room on that.
How do I stop sharing? I could, huh? I do use Zoom, but pause share, maybe pause share, yeah, stop
Is that
share.
the live
There
show?
we go. That's it.
All right. Well,
Sorry.
Now I'm lost
Doesn't know where to turn.
Okay.
by sound.
Next item on our agenda. Lost my agenda here, here we go. Website. Follow up on the website redesign. So I did talk with Patrice Garvin about this last week. There isn't much to report. I did send her when we met with the Board of Selectmen, their request to us was to basically send them a charge. So tell us what this website redesign committee should be. I submitted a draft of that to Patrice, and haven't heard anything back. So, but that was just last week, so we shall
Can you
see.
sort of summarize what that was, maybe?
And this was sort of based on the conversation we had with the selectmen and
It was like ages ago. So while Paul's looking that up, I'll tell you a funny aside. So the the company I work for, we just recently expanded. Because we're growing in the space we're in.
so that handle work.
Yeah.
Stop it.
They find this person.
I guess, well, I didn't actually read it.
No, and I
They didn't
might
write
do something for somebody
Some-
specific.
Young
Yeah.
girl
Down in
living in
Springfield,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they send it to the whole state.
Yeah.
Problem is, blue civics. Yeah. No license plate, that's.
No inspections.
What is it, a Honda Civic with no license plate?
And no.
No, they didn't give a license plate,
Over,
it says that it's a blue civic.
With no front license plate and no inspection sticker, so that should narrow it down.
So,
Hey, you don't have an inspection sticker. I was driving around.
There's more info on the web, but
Yeah.
unless she happens to walk in this room, we're not gonna help.
yeah.
Okay, so this is an email I sent to her. Charge, the Belmont Website Renewal Committee will be a temporary working group created by the Board of Selectmen to conduct a comprehensive review of Belmont's public-facing town websites. As we move further into the 21st century, more and more services are moving online, while more and more residents embrace an online and mobile-first approach to obtaining information and transacting business. Web pages cannot remain static, but must serve as a front door for wired communities like Belmont. Belmont Website Renewal Committee will study use patterns and public sentiment about the town's current website, interface with town departments, understand how they use the current website, and identify opportunities for making more information and services available to residents online. Finally, the committee will make recommendations for both short-term and long-range changes to the town's public website and town intranet to enable collaboration and interaction between residents and the town, as well as between town departments. Membership will include citizens and representatives from the following departments: town administrator, town clerk, treasurer, and tax collector, information technology, community development. Additionally, the committee will include representatives from the following committees. And again, this is a proposal. This is not necessarily what the selectmen are to do. Information Technology Advisory Committee, Council on Aging, Disability Access Committee, Vision 21 Implementation Committee.
Well done. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. And again, this was sort of give us an idea, and we'll shape it to suit our needs. So in terms of what's going to happen with that, I don't really know. But I would like to think that Patrice and working with the selectmen will create a committee. One or two members of this committee might be asked to sit on it and provide kind of the ITAC perspective. And, you know,
Is it worth including members of the public?
yes, yes.
Was
I
that
think I said
mentioned?
that, yes. Huh?
Was that mentioned in
I
your,
think so.
and this went to Patrice, not to the
Yeah.
board per se, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know that I heard it. But
Membership will include citizens and representatives,
okay.
citizens and representatives from the following departments.
got it. So,
I missed the beginning of this. Who was making the proposal? You were.
Well, this came out of the 21st century government program
The
that
subcommittee, right?
subcommittee. And also kind of came about because
We did an
Patrice-
annual report to the
in
selectmen.
the annual report, right, we sort of talked about the fact that we anecdotally as a committee had heard a lot of things from the community sort of saying it's impossible to find things on the web. I think what actually prompted it was that Patrice there was some talk about just hiring a contractor to, you know, fix the web page. And, you know, my input was, hold on with that. You know, you might want to do a more of a step back and a holistic look at how we can make the website really work for the community.
And I know we've talked about this subject
A lot.
many times. I missed the connection that we're trying to organize a new committee, but I think that may be, it seems like an extreme measure, but it might be the right thing to do, because then that group will really feel ownership of it.
Yes.
I mean, we feel like we should provide advice about the website, but we don't feel like we own it, because we don't.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I really do feel like, you know, the community should really have input on this. I think that the town employees who are tasked right now with keeping the website up to date need to be part of the process. And I worry that if you just sort of bring in a contractor and say, fix the website, that, you know, it's
we get more of the same.
more of the same.
We know if Dave has a separate intranet web presence for dealing with, you know, internal applications, or if it's hosted in the same thing and just not visible on the outside.
Like GIS and that kind of stuff?
No, I'm talking about even more fundamental things, people doing their time cards or whatever, if they have to, assuming we have to do something like that.
I'm sure there are portals, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the question is, is that something that they do internally, or is that part of, because if it's part of this,
Yeah.
that changes the equation of
Sure.
what they have to consider.
Sure. I don't know the answer. My
I don't
assumption is
either.
they're separate, but yeah, figured we should. It's a good question.
Okay, any other questions on the website redesign? I will,
I guess what's
Yeah.
your sense of, you know, how critical this is to at least Patrice?
oh, in terms of the queue, I don't think it's a
It's not a,
top of the
I wouldn't
list.
think it is, but I was just curious what your impression was. And,
I think it's something she's definitely interested in
Yeah.
doing. I think she sees the, you know, both on the process side and on, you know, kind of community input side.
Yes.
She sees a need, but, you know, they're definitely bigger fish to fry.
Right. My sort of take on it would be that Paul's established a good relationship with her, right? And so, you know, our role as an IT advisory committee is to bring things like this to surface to her. So it's a matter of now, how does that weigh against everything else? The fact that there's a good relationship means that she will give it some, you know, headspace, but.
Right. And I think frankly, just like we hear from community members like, oh, can you do something about the webpage? It's so hard to use. Yeah, I think her office hears it. I think the
Yeah.
clerk's office hears
More
it.
than we do.
The selectmen hear it. Like it's a common refrain. I wanted to find, you know, the minutes to your meeting, or I wanted to see what was going on. I couldn't find it, you know, so it is probably one of the more common complaints you hear from the community. So I think it has.
I would say it's I mean, from my perspective, the most common.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the first thing people say to me, or, oh, you're on iTech, can you get the website fixed?
Yes.
Town
Right.
website, you know, that's pretty much the majority of the comments that I've gotten.
Right.
From people I know.
Okay.
Next.
Yep, next.
Yeah, so the next two bullets are really sort of the same, right? The update from the subcommittee and these initiatives, since the subcommittee is taking on these initiatives. There were three things that had come up. We talked briefly about them, so we're still, it's a slow roller, but so let me just review. One of the requests had came from Dana Levitt from the Council on Aging to do some sort of general cybersecurity for seniors kind of program, right? And she's got a whole series of programs, so it's just one more sort of slot in her program on many topics, right? But she thought cybersecurity was one that was interesting. There's another question that had come up. We talked briefly about this, about privacy concerns from LinkedIn's takeover of Lynda, which was a service that our library, along with many other libraries, had used prior to that takeover. And then there's the third question that actually had come up from an idea that Paul had and had brought it up to the high school about a year ago, which was pairing up seniors and high school students in some sort of tutoring, right, of technology.
Genius Bar.
Yeah, Genius Bar idea. So let me just go through each of those quickly in turn and where we are. On the first one, so with Dana Levitt's, in our subcommittee, we agreed that we would be happy to support that and that it'd be a relatively sort of low effort, high benefit kind of activity. And so we floated some dates, and the last set of communications was that we were zeroing in on Tuesday, March 24th, but the timing was a TBD, right? So I asked her if she could suggest what the times would work. Typically, they do things early afternoon, right? Because again, of the hours that the Council of Aging operates. So again, the committee members sort of collectively said, we have at least a handful of us who are available at that date. We'll work out those details at our next meeting, right? And it's far enough out that we've got leeway. And my estimate is that it's probably something like a half-hour presentation with maybe 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. Right? So pretty low effort.
Do you see that as pretty much a standard PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, a presentation with some anecdotes of some local news or stories that may have hit recently, so that folks can understand the context. Right? And we've done similar things. We've already shared within our committee some of the slides that we've used in prior similar conversations. Okay. And I think our next meeting is at the end of this month, so we'll talk some more about that. With Mary Carter's request at the library around linden.com. Again, in our committee, what we had discussed was that we would, well, first of all, we wanted to double check with Mary to see if this was still an area of active interest, right? Because we just weren't sure, maybe it had resolved itself and things were fine. We determined it was, or at least, I had been in communication with Mary. That's something I was going to share back with the committee at our next meeting, but the short answer is yes, it is still of interest to them. And there have been more articles written about it. It's not that hard to Google this. The second thing that we talked about in our subcommittee was that what we wanted to commit to in terms of a deliverable was actually just a literature review and maybe some light testing in terms of understanding what LinkedIn's privacy policy was, what Lynda's privacy policy was, and maybe even just some technical things about like what kind of cookies and what kind of information is used or saved in using those services, right? And then writing that up as some sort of just this, call it like a brief, right? But leave it to Mary and her team to disseminate that information to the patrons as they best see fit. Okay. So she agreed that that was a fine approach. And so what we'll be doing next is just talking about, okay, let's go ahead and figure out how we put that brief together. Again, it's not going to be an essay or a long form, right? It'll probably be like a 2-page kind of thing that just sort of outlines the state of where things are and what we've discovered through our review.
Have you, in talking with Mary, have you sensed that the patrons' use of Lynda is being held up at this point?
I don't know, right? I think the short answer is yes. And I think that's been across the board. Now, that said, one of the articles I saw was that LinkedIn itself had actually stepped back some of their plans because of many public libraries having these sort of pushbacks, right? So it's not
Mhm.
isolated to us.
Good. No,
Yeah, I think she mentioned that when she spoke to us.
Okay, right. The third one around the tips bar, that one probably has had the least kind of progress, if you will. When we spoke to Alice, I think some of you may remember, there was some concern around liability, around on many different fronts, right? Youth protection, what kind of space would be appropriate to use, hours, things like that, and then even some just basic concerns around the way I forget who raised this, but the way that teens typically talk would need coaching because they talk too fast and the seniors wouldn't be able to understand little things like that, right? So one of the practical next steps we had was to try to engage the town council in terms of what kind of advice he might have and any considerations we might need from a legal perspective to engage in this kind of offering, right, or service. So I guess Paul got some input, so I'm going to ask him for that feedback in a second. But I didn't hear anything back directly. The other part of what we talked about too was that, again, as a committee, we did not feel comfortable actually administering a program like this, right? So it was really about, we certainly would be happy to help connect some of the dots, help with some of the, again, guidelines in terms of how it could be set up, but then find a logical home for it. We haven't done that yet because we wanted to see, again, on the legal side, what kind of guidance we would get. And then possibly in our next committee meeting, we'll start, again, assuming the legal guidance is encouraging, then figure out like where it might sit from a kind of a logistic perspective.
Are there any programs in analogous at all in the high school that you were in?
Not in the high school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they encourage service hours, right?
Right.
And Alice is the service coordinator, but she's really just a clearinghouse, right? She's not the one who's gonna, make sure that folks are showing up and having signups and such, right? The logical place would probably be the Council on Aging, right? And have them, now the question is, would they be willing to take that on?
Right.
I don't know, right? And would they be comfortable with working in that kind of way? Maybe, maybe not, right?
So the Patrice followed up with, actually, I emailed George Hall, who's town council,
Right.
and I think I copied you and Patrice.
Right, and then I followed up on that,
That's right.
right? And this is like right around the holidays, right?
That's right.
Stating what we were sort of wanting to talk to him about, but I don't know how many, I don't think I provided a whole lot of details to him.
He did get back to Patrice on it though, just between the two of them, and said this liability is not really an issue, that there should be a standard waiver form for these types of things. It's pretty common, and assuming everybody signs a waiver form, the town would not be liable for any.
This is the legal counsel speaking, right?
This is the town's council, George Hall,
Yeah.
that, the town,
Okay.
that should not be a concern, providing, the program has a standard waiver that, absolves the town of any liability or the technician of any liability. So he didn't seem to think that should be an impediment. The bigger ones, I think, are the logistical ones, which is where does this live? Does it exist as a Belmont High School, basically club that undertakes this as their charge and mission? And it's a regular, it's part of their kids' resume, but also community service hours. And then on the other side, is that Council on Aging? Is it the library? Is it,
Well, there's a location, there's timing, there's also, again, coaching, right? Like what is the standard of this? It's not just like you're gonna throw kids at seniors and have them talk, right? You may want to provide some, adult supervision or some guidance on what
Yes.
appropriate, tutoring means or expectations on the senior side about what kind of expertise will be brought to the table. So there's some structural things that would probably need to be talked about, and we could certainly provide some guidance or some at least recommendations, but we're not accepting the responsibility for actually implementing.
Right. Yeah, even though, I mean, not just, the communication, but also the knowledge of that, there might be selection criteria by which we want to you know,
I think you'd want to find somebody who wants to own it and run it and develop it. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
you know, what you probably want is initially to have some kind of test bed where you say, let's, you know, do a trial with, you know, having 5 or 6 people sign up, bring in their computers and sort of start to develop a menu of like, here are the problems that we're seeing, you know, 80% of the time.
So I'll bring this up now because it's a relatively recent thing, and a month ago I wouldn't have even been able to talk about this. But so I'm part of a board of 5 folks who are we're all mentors on the Belmont's first robotics competition team, right? Which is, and I say that way because we're no longer affiliated with the high school. Right? So it's a community-based team. We got nonprofit status and insurance and all that, actually through a 4-H, which is actually run through UMass Amherst. But we're housed in Belmont, and the majority of the team, which is roughly 30 to 35 students right now, are actually all Belmont High School students.
Win a couple of state championships and you'll be right back in the high school like the rugby team.
Yeah.
definitely.
So, right, but
Yeah.
the reason I bring this up is that, and Ellen Schreiber, who some of you may know, is also one of our board members. And we're capitalizing on a few different shifts in the town. And one of them was that the change in the Belmont Savings Bank ownership, right? So as you know, it's now People's United, right?
Yeah.
But for many years, right, Belmont Savings Bank has supported a lot of local efforts, right? And they supported the robotics team as well. That foundation is now a separate entity that is just focused on local charities, right? So there is still a Belmont Savings Foundation which supports, and they were the ones who also, I think, were a little bit of the white knight on things like the Underwood pool, right? And they were needing some
Excuse
funding.
me, where's the money coming from?
They've got an endowment.
Oh, they do.
I assume that's what it is. I don't know the details.
People's United isn't necessarily funneling money into it.
Oh, no. Yeah, I think
Apparently
that's-
not, because it is, my understanding is it's a separate entity and they've got money
Might
that
be
they.
proceeds from the sale of the bank went into to
So
fund this.
I'm painting a long story, but the short of it is that they're, as a group, are trying to figure out what sort of things they're gonna fund, right? And how they move forward, because again, they've got sort of a new perspective right now. And they're not encumbered by past actions. And we are hoping that they are looking at really big, or our sort of understanding is that they're looking for big transformative things that will impact the community. And one thing that we have been talking about in the context of this robotics team was actually doing something more at a community level that's all focused on STEAM. So science, technology, engineering, arts and design, and math. And so we just sent it in today, a proposal to them for a 3-year grant of $200,000+ that would help fund our ability to actually rent a sizable amount of space to house initially the robotics team, but then other activities that would help foster community in all of these different related things. And the reason I bring this up is that this sort of activity could be something that gets to be incorporated into that sort of thing.
Yes.
And part of the budget that we're anticipating, not necessarily from this grant, but through the program, would be to fund a full-time director of the center. And then that would be a logical place to actually ask for coordination. Right. So I put that out there as like, if we're looking for a home, this could be that home if it gets built, and there's a lot of other ifs, but that would be kind of a neat play.
I think for the time being, IT advisory committee is acting in an advisory capacity to the town on, and Alice and other interested parties on this. And I think if it gets to the point where we're floating a trial balloon and saying, okay, let's try and do this on a couple afternoons, obviously the members of this committee might be available to go and help out and be an advisor. But it's not gonna be always too long. But that's great. I mean, it's, so I mean, I think we're moving along on that. We've clarified some of the liability issues. I think maybe Alice and you and I might want to meet in the next week or two and just sort of say, let's move.
And I'd also want to follow up on your George Hall and Patrice conversation, just to get physically a hand on whatever that standard liability form was.
It might be worthwhile to have a follow-up, actually speak with George and get it from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean, there are, and I'm involved in I volunteer, ironically, not at Belmont High School, but at Cambridge Rangers and Latin as a college mentor. What does that mean? It's basically we're available to give advice to students, often students who are coming from lower income backgrounds who wouldn't have any other resource. Advice on, how to prepare their essay, how to think about the whole college admissions process. Well, we're providing something that could be very much well construed as professional advice, but not an issue. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure we went through the process of signing these release forms, but just thinking about it, there are probably all sorts of other activities within the city of Cambridge, because this is a school-wide operation, and this is just one part of it, but suggests that the Genius Bar thing, as long as you have an appropriate paragraph that everybody signs off on, it's probably enough.
One difference might be is that bad advice might not be as obvious as someone's computer getting bricked.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
let me put it this way, it might take 4 years for the kid to realize that he got
yeah,
that
but the
advice.
computer getting bricked would be instantaneous.
And
that
given
is true,
folks'
yeah.
concern around privacy, right,
Yeah.
and that we're hearing about, there may be, rules of engagement that we want to suggest or enforce, right, in terms of password use and, hands on keyboards, so.
But there is a lot of need. I mean, I think this came out of the sort of message we were hearing that there are a lot of people in the community who could use help with basic computer maintenance, and that we have a ready population of digital natives who could probably help with the vast majority of these things, not everything, and also kind of bridge that generational gap as well. So I think what you were talking about sounds like a great.
So I'll tell you a funny anecdote though, because I think coaching and helping students understand how to have these conversations would be an important aspect of this, right? And this is the anecdote. It's like, again, one of my fellow board members, who's our treasurer, she's fantastic, right? She's a PhD in chemistry, right? But she's not very technically savvy, right? And her son is on the robotics team, and she's trying to do something with like spreadsheets or something, or sunshine. And they were like apparently at loggerheads, right? And she was describing the situation at home with me, where I think her argument got to be like, this is not hard. I gave birth to you. Like that was hard, right? Like, I had to use arguments like that. Like, oh my god. So you can only imagine, people getting very heated on topics like this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks, Glenn. Are there any other questions for Glenn?
I was just going to comment, and I don't think this would be at all inconsistent with having the Genius Bar activity at least supervised by your future organization. Is that setting it up as a club is normally a good idea. There's a lot of benefits to kids by being able to say they're associated with the club, working within a club. And we may want to bear that in mind, in suggesting at least the student structure.
Yep.
For doing this.
So again, on that note, one place we could start if we wanted to is actually with the robotics team, because part of the charter of the team and the program is actually community outreach, right? And this would be a great off-season activity.
Well, they need to do their community service too.
Yeah, they need to do community service, which is great, right? And I've had some of them already do community service as team members in other facets, right? Like, and we've done outreach where we participated in a STEM fair in Lexington, and you're meeting with kids to talk about robotics, right? But this is slightly different. So that's cool. The other part of it too is like within the robotics team, they sort of self-divide into different functional groups, and there's one group that's the programmers.
Mhm.
So they're the more technically computer savvy folks. And again, it wouldn't be hard to tap into that group and say, would you be now interested in our postseason to do this sort of work? And then that actually lends itself into, we're really not ready at our stage of maturity, but like in future years, we might want to apply for this thing called a Chairman's Award. The Chairman's Award includes things like what kind of public service are you doing as a team? And so this could play very nicely into that.
And you could see with something like this, you could tap that group and be like, hey, listen, we need a ticketing and reservation system for, this Genius Bar, and is that something you guys want to take
Totally.
on
Yeah.
as a project, and stand that up and
Right.
kind of.
There's lots of really cool
It's almost like
opportunities.
a
Right.
small business in some ways.
The other thing I'll mention is that, the center that we want to build is, part of it is to have physical, to have tools and such, right?
Yeah,
Which lends itself to things like your fixer clinic.
yes, oh, yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that we could do, and
And this-
want to learn more, let me know.
Would this be on town property, or would it be?
Well, we're thinking about renting commercial space. That's where we actually need it. And one of the challenges we've had is, if to do a long-term lease, they want to know what your revenues are looking like. And right now, we're all, it's all donations. I mean, the robotics team, we're targeting a budget of about $45,000.
Wow.
Right? And it's right now all, like, we've got about 25 in the bank.
Like a 501c3 setup.
Yeah, that's through the 4-H. Like,
Yeah. Does the charter for the 501c3 mention that community outreach?
Don't know.
Could probably be amended.
Why is that relevant?
Just, if you're looking for a way to fund it,
Oh, to fund it, yeah.
it's much easier to move, for the town to give money to a 501c3 than it is.
Yeah, and what we would end up doing, one of the long-term plans, and then we can stop talking about this, is to get out from 4-H and create our own 501c3, where we would have a lot more control. But then that incurs other costs like liability.
It's really interesting. I was thinking the 4-H is,
Yes, they were very, exactly. They were very open to working with us. They've been very easy.
That's great.
And the reason it came as an idea to us is that there are other robotics teams in the state that use 4-H as their umbrella.
Have you thought of hacking a municipal utility and asking for ransom?
No.
Great idea.
I just only want to go back into.
You do realize this is all recorded right now? Right?
Don't put it in.
I don't-
It's not in
Right, there's a problem.
Okay.
Next meeting?
Yeah, our subcommittee has not met in many months, so we have nothing to add. Let's schedule next meeting.
Can I raise one?
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we do that, if they're airing of grievances.
I knew you wanted to say that. So I got an invitation, which I believe you might have also gotten, to this event on January 27th.
Yeah.
Do you know, well, let me tell people what it is and then ask you if you know anything about it. This is the town of Belmont was recently awarded a grant from the Commonwealth's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program to identify priority action items that will improve our community's resilience to climate change. You're invited to an invitation-only workshop on January 27th from 11:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Workshop will follow the community resilience building guidance developed by the Nature Conservancy. Objectives of the workshop are to identify natural hazards that present the greatest threat to the community, like strengths and vulnerabilities of residents, infrastructure, which is what jumped out, and natural resources, develop and prioritize actions that reduce the impact of hazards and increase resilience. So I didn't notice any other ITAC members invited other than you and I, but I wanted to make sure, I'm not sure I'd be able to attend.
What's the date again?
It's January 27th, which is Monday, this 10 days of Monday out.
Yeah.
10 days out Monday. The invitation is designatable if somebody else would like to go. In this group,
Who's sending this out?
it was from John Marshall. I don't know.
Does it say
Were you guys tapped as ITAC members or through some other
I
affiliation?
don't know the affiliation by which I got the, you don't happen to know, do you?
Does it say who the organization is that is sending this?
Oh, so John Marshall is the
Is there a
assistant town
link they're
administrator.
asking you to click?
Assistant town administrator.
For our town?
Yeah, for our town of Belmont.
Haven't heard of him?
That was a woman, actually.
Assistant town.
Assistant.
No, but I thought well, maybe the assistant town administrator, before Patrice was the administrator, thought she was a woman too, but I could be wrong. I mean, could be.
Anyway, if,
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much committee time on this, but if there's anybody who thinks they might be interested in going and having me sort of designate you as my alternate, just see me after the meeting.
But it's on a Monday all day,
It's on a Monday from 11:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night. It's a weird choice of time.
to be held where?
The gallery room in the home building.
Oh,
That sounds
It's
good.
using a structure that has apparently been successfully used in 100 communities.
Can we tag team, because it's, I can't do 10 hours or whatever.
Yeah,
Do
no.
a few hours here
Well,
and
it's
there.
interesting.
Why don't we follow up, see what the agenda looks like, and then,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I think in terms of like cyber resilience as part of resilience, it sounds like they're focused more on.
On climate change.
It does, but
Like,
there might be implications,
Sure.
like, you know,
Server.
are things in basements.
Right, do we have redundant IT systems and offsite backup and those types of things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds mostly non-technological
Yeah.
related, but there might be some implications.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can follow up and ask if they have a detailed agenda.
Yeah.
And then,
Kristen Hyde is who I received it from.
oh, you got it from somebody different.
Yeah, since, yeah.
And
Oh,
who's-
no, sorry. No. That was something different. It was a vendor event that I attended back in November. Also on resilience. Okay. Yeah, could you
Yeah, I'll
respond?
just reply.
That'd be great. And then we can, one idea might be to tag team, another idea might be to sort of say, is there a 1 or 2 hour window where we might be able to parachute in as ITAC and be sort of, particularly useful part of the conversation. But that'd be great. And then we can figure out who's available. Great. Anything else? Okay. Let's set our next meeting.
So I'll just note, the 19th of February is during school vacation week.
Yes, it is.
So I was gonna suggest maybe the 12th, which is right before that, or the week after vacation week, which would have been the 26th. On a Wednesday, Wednesdays still work for folks.
Well, that's RSA week. That's RSA.
If we go for the 12th.
Oh, yeah,
I'll need-
yeah, I can't do that week,
Yeah,
yeah.
if we go for the 12th, which is starting to sound like I have to do, I need somebody to do the minutes, because I'll be in California that week. I will be probably unavailable on the 12th, probably most of that week. I could do Monday, maybe.
President's Day weekend is the vacation week, right? The
Yeah,
weekend.
so the following week, right?
Yeah, the week of the 12th.
Monday is
That is
President's Day.
too. Wednesday I'm out.
I'm pretty available. Any day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be fine.
Well, I think I heard at least a third of the committee's unavailable on the 12th.
I am available, but that's okay. And what about, and did you say Monday and Tuesday don't work for you?
I can sort of make them work, but they're not generally very.
I may be out of town on Monday, Tuesday, I don't know.
And Thursdays doesn't work for anybody?
Oh,
Sweet.
Does?
That'll work for me. Thursday the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
Be okay for me.
I think that's all right. for me.
Yeah,
I might, depending on whether we take a red eye back on Wednesday or travel Thursday will determine my ability to.
You can take an Uber from the airport.
So what depends on when I get back from California, that's the thing.
It's hard to-
It'll
it's hard to come
it'll
this
be,
way.
right, well, no, the point is that it'll either be a red eye Wednesday night or a red eye Thursday night. If it's red eye Thursday night, I can't do it. If it's a red eye Wednesday, I'll be able to do it.
Why don't we set it for the 13th? And everybody remember to, buy their special someone roses and chocolates, right?
Yeah.
That way you're all set up for the next day.
We can all remind each other.
That's right.
So we're talking February 13th, right?
That's right. 7:30 PM again.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do we have quorum? I just want to make sure we think we have quorum already.
I believe I can make it.
I think I can do.
We can make it.
I can make it.
Question. I'll put it on my calendar.
I think I can make it.
motion to adjourn.
I would.
Let's submit one.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Hey, Glenn, after.
And,
I've got some
we'll-
Remember to treat those executive session minutes as if they were classified.